Okay, welcome back to Zilog and Moto for my second video of the year, and our first look at the Sega CD in 2020. Last week's review was for the pretty amazing Xenocrisis, and if you haven't taken a look at that, I definitely recommend that you should. I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to hype my own material, I'm saying that because, well, let's just say I know before playing this week's game that it's not going to be nearly as good. Last time Zilog and Moto took on a look at the Sega CD title, it was Trivial Pursuit Interactive Media Game, which only garnered 2 stars from me. The biggest problem I had with that game was that it relied heavily on the multimedia aspect of being a CD-ROM game, and tried itself more on the pictures, sound, and the occasional video, rather than trying to be the best Trivial Pursuit game it could be. Those weird cartoons interspersed in the game didn't help either. But I digress. The reason why I mention all this is because I'm trying to stress what things were like in the early days of the CD-ROM era. There was a lot of oohing and awing at the time when full motion video became, a big thing and made an appearance. It was just different than what people were used to in video games, as it was just not possible to have that sort of thing in cartridges. Sega jumped on this bandwagon with the releases of the Sega CD and decided to put out a series of games, and I'm doing these air quotes around games as large as I possibly can, based around popular artists of the time. Okay, good idea in theory, right? Now that the CD-ROM is available, we can feature audio directly from the artists, and possibly some short video or pictures. And this is definitely something that Sega does that Nintendo don't, simply because it can't be done on the Super NES, as their deal with Sony for the original PlayStation fell apart. So, what artists were chosen for this project? Well, we've got Crisscross, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, CNC Music Factory, and In Excess. Not exactly a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, except for In Excess, which were established stars long before and after this project. For the rest, we've got a group of 1 or 2 hit wonders, but of course they didn't know that at the time in late '92. Personally, I would have chosen one other artist that had some staying power like In Excess, and went with a lineup of 2 newer artists versus 2 established artists. But Sega was clearly just trying to sell games based on what was hot at the time. Well, except for the questionable choice of CNC Music Factory, but I'll save that discussion for when we get to that specific release. Today, however, we're starting out with the game Make My Video, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Why am I picking this game to start with? Well, all these releases came out in '92 and were essentially launch titles for the Sega CD, so there's no real age priority. Instead, this just happens to be the only one of the 4 I currently own in my collection. So we might as well start with that, and we'll get to the other 3 down the line. Who is Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch? For those of you born after the year 2000? Well, you know Mark Walhberg, famous movie actor, right? Well, in '91 he wasn't a famous movie actor, instead he was the 20-year-old younger brother of Donnie Wahlberg, who also had not gone into acting yet, and was instead just the bad boy of boy band New Kids on the Block. Mark decided to follow his brother into music, but instead of venturing into the boy band territory, he instead went into the burgeoning hip-hop format and attempted to become the New England version of LL Cool J. Make My Video, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch focuses on that early time in Mark Wahlberg's career before transitioning into film, and features 3 songs from him, 2 from his first album, which actually had come out the year before in '91, and the lone hit from his sophomore effort that had just been released prior to the game in 1992. So, are these 3 songs enough to salvage this game into something a Mark Walhberg fan might want to mess with 30 years later? Yeah, I doubt it. But let's take a look anyway. Just a quick note here about this series. As you can see by looking at this Make My Video release here, due to it being a launch title, it came in a cardboard box, as it was from a time early in the Sega CD lifespan when they hadn't settled on the larger jewel cases yet. There's about 22 Sega CD releases in cardboard boxes like this, as we previously saw one for Sewer Shark. Now, for some reason, the only releases designated as Make My Video were the ones from Marky Mark, Crisscross, and In Excess, and as such they were released in these cardboard boxes, whereas the CNC Music Factory release was designated as Power Factory featuring CNC Music Factory, and it was released in a large jewel case format instead. It doesn't really matter, but just figured I'd mention that note for the collectors out there. As I said previously, this is the only game in the series I have so far. I haven't exactly made it a priority to eBay these, And the cardboard titles, even less popular ones, aren't that easy to find. This one popped up at a local flea market stall, and actually I didn't have enough cash for me the first time to pick it up, so I had to go back and get it a second time. So I'm guessing even the flea market, they knew better. But not me. Anyway, the box itself isn't in the greatest shape. You can see some of these bends and creases here. You can definitely see that it looks like something heavy at some point was placed on this top portion, where the jewel case doesn't sit underneath. It certainly, could be a lot worse. There's a nice shot of Mark on the cover, of course, shirtless. And then a box inset to the side, selling the game by saying it includes the videos for 3 of his major hits. Also, I have no idea how to describe the genre of game this is, so I'd previously just put this down as a generic multimedia title, but Sega refers to this here as a music video game. So, screw it. That's what it is, a music video game. Whatever that means. Also, I found this interesting. It was apparently pre-VRC or ESRB, so it doesn't have a rating on it. But it does say at the bottom that it's recommended for ages 12 and up. Right there. I'm assuming it's because of the sexuality in the video for Good Vibrations? I don't know. Night Trap apparently has similar ambiguous warning about how it's not recommended for children on its initial release, but that doesn't specify an age. Flipping over to the back, and wow, they cheated like hell here. So there's 5 pictures that are supposedly from the game, and I guess they are technically, but they're vastly cleaned up. Let me take a look at these screenshots here. The camera's probably not doing it justice, but they are actually decent looking screenshots on the back. Nothing in the game, however, looks remotely that good, except for maybe the top picture. This one up here does actually still look kind of grainy. The video screens in the game only take up maybe 1/3 of the screen. So normally, there would be like a large border outside of this. So they've clearly blown these pictures up, and they're trying to show off the actual video itself, which I can understand from a sales standpoint, but it's not very honest. The rest is all pretty standard, selling the game stuff, mentioning the 3 songs again, right in there. And definitely tries to upsell the options in the game, making it seem like there's a lot more to do here than there is, by referencing, let's see, hundreds of images and over 30 special effects. Inside, there is the game and the manual. And the manual is definitely in better shape than the box was. But you can still see that same bending in it at the top, wherever whatever was put on that top portion of the box to bend it in. Without spoiling too much, there's not really a whole lot to this game, so there's not that much that needs to be explained in the manual. It does cover the functionality of the game at least, and still has room left over for the lyrics to each of the 3 songs, which are, let's see, if I can get to it. Like say here, you've got the lyrics to the videos. There's even a credits page that lists the cast for the video sequences. And if we look at here, it's like, whoa, Seth Green? Yep, Seth Green has one of those small parts that's so quick if you blink you will miss him. But he is in there. Okay, that's the package. Not a ton to discuss here, so let's get to the game itself, if you can call it that. Just a quick programming note, I'll be muting the sections of the video that contain music from the game, so there's no copyright issues. Just imagine hearing the same 3 songs over and over and over again. We know from the cover of the game that it's called Make My Video, and it's referred to as a music video game. So what does that mean exactly? Well, first off, when you think about that, change the emphasis in the phrase from music video game to music video game. In the loosest of concepts, it's a game around music videos, which were still at the height of their popularity. Pre-internet, MTV and VH1, jokingly referred to in-game, were hugely important to the popular music scene. With no YouTube, there was no way to watch music videos whenever you wanted to, so you had to either watch hours and hours of videos for the channel to finally show the one you wanted to see, and possibly record for viewing later. And due to this, the viewers would watch round the clock to catch a video of their favorite artist. Also, videos for a song had the ability to break singles, much in the way that still to this day video clips can go viral and turn a mere song into a sensation. A great music video could turn a mediocre single into a huge hit, due to the viewers being more interested in the video than the song itself. This is where the series of Make My Video games comes in. Each game gives the player access to 3 entire music videos of an artist, with all of them, except for possibly the NXS release, containing at least one absolute smash hit that could potentially sell the game on its own. Or it could if the game was released closer to the time when it was originally released, but of course they didn't manage to be that timely. In the case specifically of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, the smash hit in question is Good Vibrations, Mark's first single, which reached critical mass in the summer of 1991. Instead, the game's claim to being current fell to the first single off of his second album, which was released about 6 weeks before in You Gotta Believe, which wasn't nearly as popular, and its failure to sell led directly to Mark going away from music and instead focusing on acting. Also, in the third spot is the third single from his first album, I Need Money, which is a bit of a surprising choice as it didn't make that much of a dent in the Billboard Top 100, only reaching number 61. The reason why I'm saying it's surprising is because the second single, Wild Side, a cautionary tale about drug use, racism, and gang violence, was a much larger hit, breaking the top 10. The only thing I can think of is Wild Side samples Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side heavily, and because of that, the rights to the song in the game may have been a lot more complicated to nail down. Or perhaps the song's serious content just didn't lend itself to usage with the game's otherwise silly cutscenes. The game consists of 2 modes, Edit Challenge and U-Direct. I'll spend most of the time talking about Edit Challenge mode because U-Direct isn't really a game. For now, the game opens with a super pixely black and white video of a teenage boy looking all over a room for something? It's not clear, but it goes on and on for a few minutes before he finally finds a remote to point at the player, turning off the TV, which apparently was the player? Anyway, after that, a quick portion of the Good Vibrations video plays, and it looks marginally better due to having some color, but not by a whole lot. This leads into a sequence with the same boy and his sister who are arguing over what they would do to make a Marky Mark video better, before eventually giving up and asking the player for help, which leads to the start of the main game challenge in Edit Challenge mode. The brother and sister, named Jimmy and Lita apparently, start out in a boxing gym for some reason, and can ask the boxer and his trainer what they want to see in a video. Then at school, Lita asks 3 girlfriend fans of Marky Mark what they would want to see. Next, they stop at a friend's house where their band is rehearsing, and this is where Seth Green comes in, and ask her advice for going back home and finally asking the parents how a video should look. For each of the 4 scenarios, all 3 of the songs can be picked, with a 4th option allowing either the boxer trainer, girls, guys, or parents to pick the video that should be edited. Once an option is chosen, you have to pay close attention to what is said, because the people in question will say what they want to see in the video, i.e. certain sections of the video, certain elements from stock footage, or specific effects, and then also specify what they don't want to see in the video. Once you have your marching orders, the editing/game section begins. And it is where things truly go to hell, as until now we were just bordering on mildly cheesy and grainy. The editing screen consists of a toggle bar to the left, which allows you to navigate up and down selecting different effects to apply to the video, such as changing colors of the screen, or choosing black and white, or just totally changing the look of the video by splitting it, pixelizing it, or freeze framing. Also, these effects can be combined, which is why the back of the box states over 30, but in reality it's more like a combination stemming from 16 or so.
What do you think?
There's 3 boxes at the bottom, with one mapping to the A button, one to the B button, and then one to the C.
You tell me what you think.
One of these buttons will have the original unedited video, and the other 2 will have some mix of seemingly random stock public domain footage.
Me too.
Finally, on top of those 3 windows is the output of your editing choices, combining the video feed that you've chosen at the bottom with the effects you've chosen on the left. It all seems simple enough, right? Well, here's where the game aspect comes in. Rather than any sane video editing effort, you have to make any edits to the video in real time as it plays. So for instance, if you're told they want to see shots of the rooftops in the video, you have to constantly be watching all 3 of the windows at the bottom, and as soon as you see that rooftop shot pop up, hit the corresponding button to switch over to that feed, and then do the opposite if the person says they don't want to see a certain scene or subject. The same goes for any video effects used. For instance, if they request a freeze frame on a certain shot, you have to constantly keep an eye out for that shot, and then once you see it, use that effect. It's actually an interesting idea in theory, and I can understand why this was attempted. Well, once, anyway. Probably would have been a better idea to produce one of these games, and then if it did well, make more. But anyway, that in theory falls apart for a few reasons. The first part is simple repetition. As stated, you edit the video in real time, meaning that the complete video song plays while you edit it. Then there's a brief segment where they acknowledge your efforts, something to the effect of, "I saw you working there, let's see how you did." And then your edited version of the video plays. Completely. With no way to skip it. So that's listening to the song twice. Then you either get a video congratulating you for doing a good job, and a prompt to enter your name on the top editor screen, or a video complaining about what a terrible hack you are before being dumped back to the scenario choice screen again. And if you want to reattempt that scenario, you're now going to have to listen to the song 2 more times. Also, keep in mind that there's 4 scenarios for each song, so if you want to complete all 4, it will require a minimum of listening to each song 8 times. I got to the point where I would do my edit and then mess around on my phone during the second playback, so I was able to at least block it out somewhat. I totally understand why the game is structured like that, so you could see what you had done, but for the love of God, Digital Pictures, why didn't you include an option to skip it? The next issue is simply the quality of the video. As anyone's familiar with the Sega CD, or that saw any of my previous Sega CD reviews, you know the quality of the video out of the Sega CD is dicey at best. And my rig is the best case scenario running RGB out to a frame master upscaler, so just imagine how horrid this probably looks on a regular CRT with composite video. But beyond that, keep in mind my description of the edit screen. You've got 4 video frames running at the same time. A larger one that shows the current video with edits, and 3 smaller ones to choose from at the bottom. Those 3 source videos are so small and grainy, oftentimes it's extremely hard to see what's going on in them, and if you should be choosing what's going on in that video or not. And considering that's one of the main things your end product is graded on, it's a huge problem. Finally, the video grading. It's never made clear how it's done. It's obvious that there's some sort of point system in the background that gives you points for doing what's requested and takes points away for either missing cues or doing the opposite of what's asked, but nowhere is it stated. So, if you fail a video edit, there's no indication of what you got wrong or how close you came to passing, so you don't really know what you need to improve on. You're just left to blindly try again. This is reflected on the aforementioned top editor screen, which is essentially a high score screen without scores. Yeah, it's weird. All in all, congratulations to Make My Video, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. You are now in the esteemed Zilog and Moto Hall of Shame, earning only our second bomb rating. And not a bomb in a good way. About the best thing I can say for this is it's an interesting historical look at the early 90s and the early days of multimedia. But once those first 15 minutes have worn off, I can't imagine anyone ever quote-unquote playing this for a second time. Ew. That was something anyway. You know, it's kind of cool having this in a collection. Even though it's such a terrible attempt at a game, just because it's rarer than something like American Gladiators. And it's more interesting to show off if I'm showing someone my collection. But that's about it. It's like having some random issue of Spider-Man or X-Men that nothing particularly interesting was going on in, and that once you read it, you'll never read it again. Tune in next week for the big episode 50, where I finally break out the 32X and Zilog and Moto goes 32-bit. Sort of. Well, remember, whatever you like to play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later.